Hello, this is Randy Conley with the Ken Blanchard Companies. Thanks for spending a few moments with me. Like many of you, I have been appalled at the death of George Floyd at the hands of a policeman. And I'm saddened that once again, racism, prejudice, and police brutality has reared its ugly head in our society. And as I was thinking about the events recently, I thought I'd reach out to a few of my friends who are African American, and I just wanted to have a discussion with them. Just wanted to talk. I wanted to see what their viewpoints were on what was happening and what I could learn. And about 40 minutes into the conversation, we realized that we were talking about some really important things. And we said we should record this because there are other people who might be interested in what we're talking about, people who may benefit from the things we were discussing. And it could be a constructive example for how others can engage in conversations about race and prejudice. And so we did that. So what you'll see for the next 20 minutes or so is just a conversation. And we touch on several different topics related to race and prejudice. And I hope it encourages you and provides you a good example of how you can talk to your friends of color about these issues. You know, trust is very powerful, and trust is the foundation of any relationship between people. But trust requires risk. And that means someone has to reach out and extend trust first to another person. And I think that, along with many other things, is so crucial right now. As we reach out to our brothers and sisters of color, we need to take a risk. We need to extend trust and start building the bridges that can cross the racial divides that separate us so easily. Steve, you were getting ready to share a story about one of your family members and just sort of how you and your family are dealing with current affairs. And so why don't you share about that?
Yeah, this came out, we were having a discussion about, Randy, you wanted to know what would be some things that a person can do, to make you a better a friend or a better partner to someone who's a different race than you, or just between me and you, for instance.
Yeah.
And what came to mind was, how hard that could be to try to answer that question. And I was talking about my niece last night. She called me and she was having a problem because she had just realized her mom is Mexican. Her dad is black, my brother. And she is now 23, maybe 22. And she had just realized last night that her mom does not see the George Floyd situation and his death and the resulting protests and the perspective on Black Lives Matter and police brutality. She does not see it the same way as she does. And that came about because her mom had posted on Facebook a comment that said, "Congratulations to the police," or something very positive. And my niece was concerned about that because her picture is also on the Facebook, picture that her mom is using. Mm-hmm. And so she wanted to know why her mom posted that. Her mom didn't want to talk about it. Her mom got defensive. And so my niece said, "What I need you to take my picture off of your Facebook picture. Mm-hmm. Don't include me in that because I don't support that." And she was really, and she called me because her dad is dead now. And so she called me and she was really distraught that she just realized her and her mom are on totally different pages when it comes to the discussion of race. How do you have that discussion with your mom?
Wow.
Okay. Now what do you do? Because it also goes to the heart of what perception does her mom have of her, who my niece identifies as being black. So all these things come crashing down. You see, and so how do you talk to your mom about that? Somebody who's one of the closest people to you, the closest person to you.
Right, right.
So to talk to you about that, and that's difficult as well. So you can see that that's not the easiest question to answer when is, what can you tell me that would help me be a better person to you that you're not doing already?
Right, right. Yeah, that is, it's not just a conversation between white or black or
Right.
man, woman. It's mother, daughter,
Yeah.
within the same family. And yeah, there's so many layers to this. And, we were talking earlier about sort of the mistrust that is embedded when we're talking about racial barriers, between folks, the level of mistrust that's there. And we were talking about just needing to start on a one-on-one level, just as one example. What are your guys' thoughts about the role that mistrust plays in this issue?
Randy, if I could share, this week I had, we're recording this on a Friday. On Monday, I was up picking up food for our church that was being donated, and a gentleman, I was at the side of the store as I usually do. Got out of my vehicle, opened it up. I'm getting ready to load in this donated food, and the gentleman pulls up, and I'm in East County, San Diego. I don't want to, be mean to the community. But what happened is he rode up on a motorcycle, pulled off his motorcycle helmet, had this long white beard, and I was at the back of my car, and he stood, 2 spaces over, and he said, "How are you?" And I said, "Fine." But I remembered, I'm 62 years old, or will soon be 62 years old. I remember a conversation when I was 17, and my father told me, "You don't engage a white man that you don't know." And I've got 30 years of ministry experience, like I say, 62 years of age. And in that moment, I became that 17-year-old kid.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Oh man." And the gentleman then asked me again, "How are you?" And I said, "Oh, I'm fine." And I kept busy doing what I was doing, my head down, focused on my work, but out of my peripheral vision, I could see he was still standing there. And then he did something that just blew me away. He walked up to my car and he asked me, "No, really, I want to know, how are you doing? You and I are about the same age. We can talk." And at that moment, well, I won't say at that moment, but after it was all over, I realized when I was driving away that when he rode up on that motorcycle and took off his helmet, my own prejudice rose up. I didn't trust him. Didn't know him from Adam, never seen him before, and may never see him again. But I didn't trust him because I did my computer ran and I did the check. Motorcycle, loud motorcycle. I'm in, a part of the community that normally ain't a whole lot of guys looking like me. He's got this white beard looking like ZZ Top, and I'm just, that just has. And so I ran that checklist in a moment and said, "No, I'm not going to trust this guy." Wow. And he wasn't going to have that. He wanted me to trust him. And so he went, like I said, he came to my vehicle. He walked over 2 parking spaces and stood there and said, I don't know what you've experienced. I mean, he apologized to me, saying he didn't know what I've experienced in my life, but he knows that reasonably we're the same age, that he knows I've experienced some things and experienced prejudice. And then he asked me, he says, "I understand that George Floyd's brother is going to speak today. Do you think people will listen to him?" And I was unaware of that Terrence Floyd was going to speak. Right. He says, I really want to get home to watch and hear what he has to say. And I was like, wow, I thought I had overcome in my own mind some of my own prejudices, my own distrust of people, because I believe that we're created in the image of God, and I believe that we should trust one another and all that. But in that split second, what I have experienced all my life in some way, shape, or form came up.
Wow, that's powerful, Rolland. Thank you for sharing that. Greg, I know you have a unique perspective being involved, a career in law enforcement and being an African-American man in law enforcement, and law enforcement is such on a hot seat right now. What are your thoughts about what's going on and what we can just do as individuals and leaders to just help steer the conversation in a positive direction?
So Randy, first, thank you for initiating this conversation. And I do believe that more conversations need to take place, not only across America, but in our homes, in our churches, in our schools, kids on the block. Conversations need to take place. So first, thank you for sharing that. From a law enforcement perspective, as a young boy growing up in Compton, California, and actually seeing and experiencing police brutality myself. I did not like the police growing up where I grew up because of what I saw happening in my community. And it wasn't all. It wasn't all. It's always a few bad apples that sort of lead to sort of some professions all being painted with the same brush. So I don't want to do that. I believe, Randy, that change starts from the inside. So as a kid, I could have chosen a different route, but I chose in junior high, I said, I want to be in law enforcement. I said, I don't want to be a victim of the system. I want to be in the system so I can affect change. And I'm happy to say policing is a noble profession. And I challenge your listeners out there, whether it be them or people that they know that are African-American or people of color, get involved in the law enforcement community in that profession if you want to see change. Because that's where change begins. If you wouldn't go to a doctor that was a bad doctor and continue to go to him, you wouldn't go to a bad dentist and let them pull out your teeth. So why do we allow bad officers to stay? And there are so many good officers. I worked with a lot of them for 27 years. I was in law enforcement. But change begins, we at Blanchard said this, relationships move, or actually results move at the speed of relationships. Randy, I'd like to take that one step further and say relationships move at the speed of trust. So it starts with trust. You can't have a relationship without first beginning to trust somebody. So I challenge people. I'll give one quick example. I know Zeb and Rolland will really, I think, appreciate this. But when I was living in San Francisco, I attended one of the most diverse churches in the San Francisco area. And we, Zeb and Rolland, we had people come into church sitting next to each other that didn't look like them. And we actually thought that was enough. But our pastor, who just happened to be African-American, our church, which was predominantly white, he did this. He said, that's not enough. He said, what's going to happen when a young black boy marries a young white girl? Then what are you going to say? So he started something called Risk Sundays, R-I-S-K Sundays. And he said, so I'm going to challenge you every fifth Sunday. I want you to go out to dinner or invite someone in your home that doesn't look like you. And Zeb and Rolland, when I tell you, that changed our church's environment, because it went from just sitting next to people to having relationships with people. And that's why I'm on this call today, Randy, because I have a relationship with you.
Yeah, that's powerful, Greg.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. You're getting ready to preach there, Greg.
I was.
I've heard Greg.
He's not getting ready to. He was preaching.
Yeah, he was preaching. That's true.
Rolland.
I've heard Greg at conferences and stuff, and when he gets going, he's preaching. That's for sure. Zeb, let me hear from you. So Zeb is a pastor at the Rock Church. For those in the, the senior pastor of Rock Church is Miles McPherson, former Charger football player, very well-known pastor, and does a lot of speaking on racial reconciliation, and it sort of weaves through a lot of the programming and efforts of the Rock Church, and Zeb is on the front lines of that. Zeb, what are some of the things that you guys are doing to help your members of the congregation, engage in this topic and keep the conversation going forward?
Kind of piggyback off what Greg said was Pastor Miles is that pastor as well. He really makes sure you know who you're sitting next to. He does sermons to where it's interactive, to where you have to talk to the person next to you because you're asking questions, you're praying for that person. And so even though he calls the church a Skittles church, he still makes sure that people are engaging with one another. And there's been some times that the church has been really uncomfortable for people because they were sitting next to somebody they did not know. And so, but what I think it does is it does break the barrier and starts the conversation like this right here. Conversations are huge. Asking questions. That's how you get to know someone. And then through that, you start to develop that trust, because at the heart of trust is intimacy.
Right.
Intimacy. When you talk to that other person and you're starting to get intimate with that person, say your spouse or whoever it is, you are in an intimate relationship. And to get to know someone, you have to be vulnerable. You have to be transparent. And you have to be able to say and have those courageous conversations when you do feel offended or you do get rubbed the wrong way. And so from my experience and just, pastoring different walks of people, that's where I've been and that's what I've seen in where I work now. So.
Wow.
Yeah, I want to piggyback on something you just said about asking questions and finding out about what's in the other person's head. I was walking, it was not that far ago, not that long ago, but walking through a shopping center, me and a colleague who was white were going to get something to eat. And every black person that we passed, I did this. All right?
What's up?
Yeah, I did this. And so, you know what I'm talking about, all right? And so every black person that I pass is almost like, I see you, that kind of thing, right? And so after about 5 or 6 times, my colleague says to me, did you know those guys? No. I know them. They know me, but I don't know them. And so I had to explain to him what was behind my comfort level in acknowledging people that I did not know, but who I know. Okay. And that's because he said I would never do that. And so I had to explain the complexities behind being able and comfortable and almost a requirement to do that. Okay. Now compare that to just recently. Just recently, we had people who were demonstrating so they could go get a haircut. Okay. And all these people wanted the stores back open. And they kept using the word civil rights. Their civil rights were being violated. And I want you to think about that and ask, how many people of color, how many black people did you see out there in those demonstrations? Okay. How many did you see holding up signs talking about, I need to be able to go to the health club? And compare that to what you see right now. And so then the question would be, that's a real big difference in life experiences that we are growing up with. There is a lot of questioning and answering that we need to do. We need a lot of conversations. And I think for churches to be able to have the conversations that they're having are a great start, because it's under the umbrella of something that's common to everyone in the church. They're there for the same reason, right? And that is a great place to start, because those kinds of situations and perspectives that we have that are different, it's going to take a lot of conversation, but we have to be willing to open up, and we have to be curious. We want to know. We want to know. And that would be I think the impetus behind some of those conversations that we need to have more and more, like Greg was talking about, everywhere.
Randy, man, I just really quick, Zeb, I'm still in that into me see.
I like that.
I'm still in that. It's stolen.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give you credit. I'm gonna give you credit once, though, Zeb.
I love it.
You know, but Randy, isn't that so powerful? You know, thank you for having this conversation and starting this conversation. But Zeb, when you said into me see, I think
I like that.
wow, that is all I've asked for. I felt that.
Mm-hmm.
It hurt me because I'm like, I'm Dr. Campbell. I was a federal agent. But oftentimes, Randy, people saw my color first and they didn't know all of those other things that I had accomplished personally. They didn't matter because the first thing that people, so all I'm screaming out and I'm crying out, and what you've done with me, Randy, what my other Blanchard colleagues have done, you've gotten to know me. Into me see. Just and if we as a country could just pause for a moment and get to know someone that doesn't look like them, and even someone that does look like it, just get to know somebody. It would do us a great service to have moments of just growth.
I think that is, Zeb. I mean, you, dude, my man.
I think you nailed it, Zeb.
You knocked that one out of the park, Zeb.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm gonna steal that too.
Yeah, me too.
I'm gonna be a little kinder to you than Greg. I'm gonna give you credit at least twice. Since I'm in San Diego County, I'm only gonna give you credit when I'm out of the county.
Yeah.
I wasn't the originator. I got it from somewhere. I can't remember where.
Well,
Hey,
glad you shared it.
Nothing new under the sun.
Well, you guys know the rule about attributing quotes, right? It's like the first time you give credit, it's like my friend Zeb said, into me see, and then the second time you say, it's been said, and then the third time you say, I've always said.
Yep, that's how it works.
Yeah.
Thank you, Randy, for giving us permission.
Yes, thank you, Randy.
Thank you, guys. I mean, I love and appreciate each one of you just as friends. And if you guys are open to it, what I would love to do, just so everybody who's listening knows, we had intended originally this to be a 1-hour conversation. And me and my ignorance, as we're getting started, I'm like, hey, guys, how about some of these as questions to, guide our conversation? And Steve very politely corrected me. He's like, Randy, what you're talking about is like this big, even bigger than this big. It's like, there's no way we could do that justice in a 1-hour conversation. And so we spent 40 minutes of our 1 hour together talking about just the immensity of the issue and how, most importantly, we need to keep the conversation going. So in that regard,
I'd love to do that.
I would love to schedule another time with you guys.
I would love it.
Continue the conversation.
I would love it.
And maybe we have a series of these over a period of time where we just help all the leaders that read my blog, that interact with the Ken Blanchard Companies, that engage with us on social media.
Yeah.
Just insights into their fellow brothers and sisters and what their life experiences are and how we can be more aware of what each other's going through. And so if you're open to that, I'd love to continue the conversation.
I would. And I'd like to take also, I would like to, what Zeb was doing earlier. Zeb, you were submitting some questions earlier on, and I think that would be helpful, so we can definitely find a way to use the time in a really effective sort of way, so we can maybe narrow it down to a couple of topics because every topic leads to another topic.
Yeah, that's
And
for
so,
sure. So
Um,
any of the readers or listeners of this have particular questions that you would love to ask of this group of men here, please submit them and we'll field them. This will be posted on the leadingwithtrust.com blog. It'll be shared through my social media channels, Blanchard's social media channels, and please shoot me an email. My email address is randy.conley@kenblanchard.com. Would love to talk to you more and engage you in conversation about this because there's few things, more important than what we're talking about today. So thank you, Steve. Thank you, Zeb. Thanks, Rolland. Thanks, Greg. Appreciate you guys. Blessings to you, and we'll keep the conversation going.
Thanks, Randy, and
Good to
good to
see
meet
you
you,
all.
gentlemen.
Hey,
Take
nice
care.
to meet.
And
Yeah. Hey, Greg. I look forward to seeing you, man.
Yes.
And Zeb and Roland, since you are in my neighborhood, I can't wait to meet up with you guys.
All right.
Take care, gentlemen.
All right.
Hey,
Take
all
care.
right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Take care, Randy.
bye-bye.
Bye-bye.